I'll take the opportunity to offer my greeting. Good early morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Good to see you.
Question 1, dear Ajahn. When sitting in meditation, we recite Buddho in sync with the breath until the mind is calm, and the mind automatically will let go of this mantra. My question is, does this also happen to walking meditation? Thank you.
Yes, it can. So what happens is the meditation object would normally be, with the breathing, it's the feeling of the breath. And with the walking meditation, it's the feelings on the soles of the feet, as the feet are lifted, move, and then place. But when the mind is consistently when the mindfulness is consistently with a feeling as the meditation object, be that either the breathing or the feelings on the base of the feet, when the mindfulness is consistent enough, the Samma Sati, right mindfulness, gives rise to some Samma Samadhi, right collectedness. And peacefulness then can become the object of the mind for a period of time. So there might be the awareness of the feeling, but no need to use a mental recitation because the mind is truly with that object. And for some people, as samadhi develops, the mind can go into a pure state of peacefulness, and the person just stops where they are, and they're not aware of the body or the feeling of the feet. And a period of time can elapse, and they come out, and then they're mindful again that they're in the standing posture. So when a person's samadhi truly develops, that's like jhana samadhi. There was an occasion, I think it may have been Luang Por Mun, who was practicing in the jungle. It's one of the reasons the forest masters would go and practice in the jungle, was because to expose themselves to a bit of fear, to make sure that they were extra heedful in keeping the mind wholesome, the fear of death, wanting not to die, but also if they did die, wanting to die with the mind in a wholesome state. So this bhikkhu, this venerable, saw a tiger in front of him and then one behind him, and his mind went into samadhi. He wasn't sure how long for, but when he came out of samadhi, he was still standing and the tigers were gone. So it seems to be one of the wondrous benefits of Samma Samadhi, right concentration, right collectedness, is that it does have a protective quality. So no one can harm your body when you're in the jhanic absorption. So yes, it's a bit of a progression. The mind gets peaceful enough that it doesn't need the parikamma or the mantra, and then it can get peaceful even further, where it isn't mindful of the particular feelings that brought this mind to a state of unification or one-pointedness, collectedness. I like the word collectedness. And so yes, similarly with breath meditation. And in my experience, sometimes if I'm on retreat and I'm doing 5 or 6 up to 8 hours of meditation a day, sometimes when I'm on the walking path, the mind simply is with the breath and it prefers to stay with the feeling of the breath even though I'm walking. It's just walking up and down on the path, but the mind is still mindful of breathing. But that's usually happens for me when the mind is in a more refined and peaceful state from coming from a lot of practice. And that's fine too. Some people find that the feeling of the base of the feet may become less prominent in the mind, and the mind may pick up the Buddho as the object, and just this, the mind is very peaceful, being aware of the syllables. So people's minds are different, and basically we do it, and inclining the mind towards peacefulness, whichever way it becomes peaceful.
Question 2. I can't do walking meditation and sitting meditation. I tried Buddho, but it does not work. there is too much proliferation of thoughts. The speaker said that it is due to my kilesa, but I do not know what are my kilesa. All I know is that I overthink.
So I appreciate this person's honesty, and I appreciate their challenge. And I think that's probably what most people think when they begin. Most people come to sit and notice how much thinking there is and think, I can't do this, this is too hard. I think that's where everybody starts. And but it is also true that some people do have more of an issue with obsessive thinking than others. So it might be a real challenge for some people. But to say I can't meditate is not, I don't think, accurate, and I don't think helpful. So if one is sitting and there's a lot of thoughts, that you know you're thinking is already something. So if you know you're sitting and you know you're thinking, it is meditation. It might not yet, it's not yet advanced meditation, but it is the beginning of meditation. And if some more clarity of mind develops, you might know whether the proliferations, the thoughts are wholesome or unwholesome. Right? You might, or just frivolous. You might just know I'm thinking again, I'm thinking about frivolous things, or I'm angry again, or I'm caught in desire again. And so there's a development of some more what you might call self-awareness, or just seeing what is affecting the mind with a bit more clarity. That is meditation. But in terms of getting some space from thought, if a person really is an obsessive thinker, I would recommend a half an hour of loud and vigorous chanting. So you give the mind something to do. And if it's a complicated chant in a different language, sometimes that can be really helpful, because you really have to pay attention. Suppose you're doing the Dhammacakka Sutta, the Anatalakkhana Sutta, or the fire sermon, Adita Pariyaya Sutta. You have to pay attention to chant these suttas. They have a nice melody, a bit of repetition. Once we're familiar with those suttas, we can actually contemplate the meaning, read it in English occasionally, read it in English before you do it. If you do it a couple of times a week or once a week, after 6 months or a year, you'll be familiar with the content of the sutra and you can contemplate it while you're chanting it. But normally people will have to pay attention to be able to chant it. Some people do make the effort to learn these chants, learn them by heart, but most people don't. So having to look at the words, chant them loudly, chant them correctly, chant them quickly, most people find after a half an hour of chanting in Pali, the mind is much more willing to be quiet for a while, because it's like you had a lot of energy, so you went for a run. When you go for a run, you feel, okay, you've expelled some energy, and have a shower and sit down now. The body's more willing to rest. So, yeah. And chanting, doing energetic and vigorous and long session of chanting is helpful for any number of things. So if the mind is falling into depression, this can be helpful just as something energizing, helpful distraction. It's also good for the immune system. It's like some Khanika Samadhi or Upajjhara Samadhi, momentary concentration can occur, and neighborhood concentration can occur when we chant with faith. And just to, if you know you're in the middle of a reaction, but it's not the full reaction yet, something's affected the mind, and you're going into a reaction. Get on your mat, pick up your chanting book, chant the protective chants, the parittas, chant for half an hour and have a look. You may be able to protect the mind from having fully flung bad reaction. And you may have gently restrained it to have a smaller reaction than it normally would have, because you arrested the energy and directed it skillfully. So on one level, you know that things happened and I'm upset, but on another level, you're giving your interest and your attention to what you're chanting. At the end of the half an hour, there's some contentment, some brightness, and some ability to deal with that phenomenon. So chanting, also loneliness, and the monks going to the jungle for periods of time, sometimes months, and some loneliness will come up, fear will come up. So picking up the chanting, doing an hour of chanting, and it's like skillful distraction, replacement through opposites. At the end of the hour, the loneliness is just gone. Some feeling of contentment. At the end of the hour, there's no fear. Just a bright mind. So chanting can be very helpful. So I would experiment with that. What's it like if you really do sincerely chant? Now, don't put on a tape and chant along with it. You have to be one making the effort to make the noise. Hear your own voice in your own head loudly. And it's not, if you're chanting the Anatalakkhana Sutra in Pali, it's not really possible to have a parallel thinking process. Unfortunately, it is once you know it by memory. Like I have this experience being an abbot while I'm chanting the evening chanting, thinking about, oh, I haven't arranged the full payment of the tiles. I've only done a deposit. I'll have to, I made a determination I'm going to call my mum. I haven't called her more this year. I haven't called her yet. It's like while I'm doing the evening chanting by memory, I do have these thoughts. I have that bill needs to be paid. I need to call my mum. But if you don't know it yet, it's you have to read it. That can be quite helpful. So yes, please persevere. Please be patient. As a general progression, I have taught people and encouraged people, and people have got results with obsessive thinking if they did up to a half an hour of vigorous chanting and then a half an hour of walking meditation before coming and doing the sitting. It's like taking a more coarse object, an intermediate object, before you try to take the refined object of the breath. You slowly corral and gather the mind to be more subtle. So do the chanting, do some walking, then come and sit, see how it goes. And don't be self-defeating. Don't say, I can't meditate. Your meditation in the beginning might be mindful that you're thinking. Try to notice, is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Is it neutral? Which hindrance is it? Take that as a practice. Which of the 5 hindrances is this thinking related to? What's the energy under the thinking? Sometimes you have to apply mindfulness and wisdom to it. Okay, this is thoughts about sensuality. This is thoughts about irritation. This is anxiousness and worry. These are doubts. And then you at least develop a bit more mindfulness and wisdom about the content of the thoughts. And understand that everybody is practicing with the same stuff, just to greater or lesser degrees. Keep going. Sadhu.
Sadhu. Question 3. Dear Ajahn, if I am not mistaken, I understand that Ajahn aspires for rebirth into Tusita Heaven. Could Ajahn kindly share the reasons for doing so, that we can have a fuller understanding and also help to formulate our aspirations? Sadhu, much gratitude and metta.
That's a very personal question, isn't it? Well, I'm a very open and truthful person. That's your good fortune. Some people wouldn't tell people these things. They just keep it a quiet little aspiration. But yes, for that reason. People have different karmic aspirations, different affinities, and different aspirations are appropriate for different people depending upon where they are in the process of purifying their mind. So firstly, my general sense for this world, this particular human realm at this particular point in the eon, is that Dharma practice is going to get more difficult because Sila is degenerating. And, you know, if you don't have to think that far ahead, 10, 20 years, you know, people want to create the Google masks and people to walk around and see how addicted people are to their devices now. What would it be like to have a Google mask glued to your face the whole time? You know, or when the technology gets even more developed, that you have the chip in your brain which connects you to the Internet of Things, and you just think a thought and you get Google's response, or you want to play a computer game, or you want to be in a virtual reality pornography film, or whatever the hell they come up with. And then also some of these technologies that may be developed to the point that they start controlling our thoughts. And you know, if the world does move in that direction where the technology develops more and more, and we are kind of enslaved by it, it's going to become more difficult to extricate ourselves, liberate ourselves. And also, we don't know if keeping sila is going to be, you know, the way the understanding changes, cultural norms change. Like it may become an understanding that people should have a lot of sex, because if they don't have a lot of sex, they'll be suppressing their desires. So they should have sex, aren't they? And they should have sex with men and women because they shouldn't be homophobic, or, you know, it's like, who knows where it's going, these cultural trends. So, but what we can see is that in general, I'm not making any judgments, I'm just saying that where the societies change and cultural trends change, and what becomes, like when I was a teenager, if anybody wanted to look at pornography, they'd have to go to a seedy kind of part of town and get a magazine in a shop that most people wouldn't go to, and now anybody can do it with a tap on one of their devices, and it's free, and it's you know, the world changes a lot in just a couple of decades. And what effect is that having on young people's minds who are exposed to that from a young age? So in general, my feeling is you better practice your Buddhism diligently in this human world as much as possible while you can this lifetime. And personally, I wouldn't aspire to be being reborn in this world with the intention of practicing Buddhism, because I don't have much confidence that what will be left will be very good quality, or what the society will be like will be conducive to your practice. So I guess one of the reasons I have the aspiration to be reborn into Tusita Heaven is because I became aware of its existence, and I became aware of its existence through discussions with my teacher Ajahn. So Tusita Heaven is described as the heaven of the contented, and it correlates with the experience of Upacara Samadhi, so that the experience of where the mind is about to unify in jhana. A lot of people don't have experience of jhana, but they will have experience of neighborhood concentration, where there's very few hindrances, only wholesome thoughts, occasional thoughts, feelings of contentment, fullness, coolness. So that's the state of the Tusita Deva the whole time. So they experience the contentment of Upacara Samadhi for as long as they are there. It's a realm where you produce more merit. So if you're born in the realm of the four kings, the lower heaven realm, or if you're born in Dawa Timsa Heaven, you tend to be getting the fruits of your past good deeds through very pleasant sensual experience that is in that realm. And just the Deva's body are experiencing more rapture and more pleasure. That's part of their good karma. They have a lot more pleasure in their bodies. And but in the Tusita realm, because the mind is actually bright with the quality of contentment, it's actually producing merit. So it's a way to go to heaven that doesn't, because the Buddha also says that a lot of devas fall from the heaven state to a hell state because they actually use up all their merits. It's like going on a big, long, fabulous vacation, using up all your savings, realizing I really like this, so then maxing your credit card. And then at a certain point, I don't want to go back yet, max your credit card, and then realizing, okay, I have no savings, and now I have a debt, and I've got to go down and work really hard now. And so, but also because they don't experience much dukkha, when they're dying, they do. And so the mindfulness gets weak in that life in heaven, and then they suddenly have pain in the body smells bad. And apparently their friends reject them because death is so rare, lifetimes are so long, their friends abandon them when they don't look beautiful, and the garlands, flower garlands start to wilt, and they get a bad smell, or their friends run away. Ew, what happened to him? And so the lower heaven realms are a bit more dangerous in terms of using up one's merit and dying with not good mindfulness. But also Tusita Heaven is the place, like Lord Buddha, it is explained in the Buddha's biography that he was in the heaven of the contented before he took his birth as the Bodhisattva who became the Buddha. And So Tusita Heaven, according to my discussions with Ajahn, is the place where the Buddhists who are developing virtue go in between lives to kind of rest in a way. But their wholesome states are maintained and their merits increase. And to go higher, to go to a Brahma realm, when the mind is extremely peaceful and extremely bright, there's a danger of becoming identified with the brightness, perceiving it as oneself, and becoming a bit conceited and a bit arrogant. And so the Brahma realm is a bit dangerous. One doesn't. And also, apparently, some great bodhisattvas who will one day be Buddhas or great disciples who are in Tusita Heaven, they also teach there. So you would expect that beings who've been practicing Dhamma for many eons and training with Buddhas and great disciples with their own aspiration will have heard a lot of wisdom and may be inclined to share it. So I think even some of the birds, like there's phoenixes and dragons and whatnot, apparently some of the birds utter Dharma verses from the trees in the Tusita Heaven. So. But the thing about an aspiration like this is you have to believe it actually exists. So the thing about Deva Nusati in general is that recollecting of deities or devas, Lord Buddha explains that it's a practice for people who have a faith faculty. So you have to actually believe that such a place exists. And I do. I don't have any doubts about the existence of the heaven realms. And so yes, I would like to go to Tusita, and in the Dharma degenerating age, when Sila gets worse, and it's going to be a long time before they call it a seemingly endless period of darkness. But of course, the Deva lifetimes are very long also. So the way I see it is kind of like Sila is going to be degenerating, right? And so I'm hoping to kind of jump up here. And then Sila is going to come back up again, and I'd like to land then. So apparently Maitreya will come in about 300 million years, approximately. And yeah, so the other thing about Tusita Heaven is the devas of Tusita Heaven can choose their time of rebirth. So there seems to be enough mindfulness and clarity, and so suppose Maitreya was there, and Maitreya is going down to become the Buddha. It's like, okay, I'm coming too. I'm going too. But the virtue in the human realm will start to get better long before Maitreya comes, because this Buddha came when the lifespan is 100 years maximum, and Maitreya will come when the lifespan is 80,000 years. So just after the peak of the Eon, where it's 100,000 years. So for a long period before the Maitreya Buddha comes, there will be human beings will start keeping virtue again, start meditating again. And, because when Maitreya Bodhisattva comes, it's like the peak of the Eon. There's no wars, there's no famine, there's no disease other than aging and death and hunger. There's no colds, there's no flus, there's no blood diseases, there's no disabilities, there's no natural disasters. It's a time where the form realm is as close as is possible to being a heaven realm. And that's because of the merits of the beings that get born together at that time. And, so long before then. So anyway, my aspiration is to get somewhere safe, continue practicing in the heaven realm, get good Dhamma, pay respect to great beings, and to come down when virtue is at a good level again, and continue my cultivation in this world, and to practice with Maitreya Buddha, possibly become enlightened under his tutelage, to be discussed with him, samsara permitting.
Sadhu, may your aspiration come true.
Sadhu. To be born in Tusita Heaven does require a strong quality of faith, and to make the aspiration after meditation, when the mind becomes peaceful, that increases the chances. So may I be reborn in the heaven in the company of the Tusita Devas at the breakup of the Khandas, after death, this lifetime. We make those kind of aspirations when the mind becomes peaceful. And after the meditation, that will give it more power. And if we do it repeatedly for a period of a lifetime, then it becomes kind of like a likely outcome, laying down the causes. The Dhammapada says the mind becomes like what it attends to, and make that our aspiration. Some people want, I mean, apparently Buddhism is going to grow in Russia and Australia. Some great Ajahns have said, Ajahns have said in the future, Australia and Russia will be centers of Buddhism, of what's left. But I don't know what quality is going to be left. So yeah, so for myself, being someone who with strong faith, and also who has a practice of Devanusati, and I'm aiming for the in Tusita, beings are spontaneously born upon a lotus, and they don't have a childhood. It'd be kind of nice to avoid that for once, for a change. No first day of school, no kind of nasty geography teacher, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. Ajahn, question 4. Regarding Phowa and Jang Chok, why and how the rites and rituals can help lead one to Pure Land, despite it stated that we are the beings of our karma. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah. I'm not sure of what the study of Jang Chok is, but I have done some reading about the study of Phowa. Phowa is a transportation of consciousness to the Pure Land at the moment of death. And my godson in India is calling. I'm just going to not take his call. Sorry. One second. Got them. Sorry. I'll call him back. So in the Phowa practice, the practitioner actually practices sending consciousness. The base of consciousness is considered to be in the heart area, and the practitioner practices sending it out of the crown of the head by using visualization, by using mantra, by using visualization, mantra, and certain syllables. But it is an advanced practice. So the thing about the Vajrayana teachings is when the practitioners of Vajrayana describe why Vajrayana is superior, one of the things they say is because it is intended for people with superior abilities. And so a lot of people then get this feeling of, I want to practice Vajrayana because it's intended for people with superior abilities. But then you have to ask yourself, am I that person? Do I yet have superior abilities? Because if you're trying to do a practice which is intended for people with superior abilities and your abilities are not yet superior, you might not get very good results. And one of the things the Dalai Lama said in one of the teachings I attended of his was that for people practicing deity yoga, visualizing themselves, because the Vajrayana is sometimes described as the resultant vehicle, you visualize the result, you visualize yourself as an enlightened Buddha, or as a 10th level bodhisattva with all the jewels and all of the ornaments and all of that. And if a person, but the Dalai Lama says, a person has to have a working and functioning understanding of emptiness. They have to know that the self-view is an obscuration, it's a delusion. And they're using these visualizations to cultivate the most wholesome, positive qualities possible, the Brahma Viharas. But the Dalai Lama then said, but if a person doesn't have a good understanding of emptiness, practicing Vajrayana Tantra in this way can increase the delusion of self and other and lead to arrogance and kind of like narcissism. I'm a great bodhisattva, the big self-view, thinking that you really are the bodhisattva. Well, of course, a real bodhisattva has direct perception of emptiness all the time, ultimate and conventional reality, full wisdom parami. So there are some dangers to trying to practice these things if one isn't ready. And but with regards, is it possible? It's possible. And with regards to the question, because karma is karma, how can one go to a pure land? So if one is practicing generosity, if one is keeping ethical precepts, if one is meditating, if one is recollecting the deity, suppose one is thinking of the way, for people who have doubts if Amitabha exists, personally, I don't have doubt that Amitabha Buddha exists. And, just go out to the sky and look at the nighttime sky and the stars and ask yourself, is it possible that there's another human-like world? Is it possible that there are other humanoids? Is it possible that there's another teaching Buddha teaching right now? For myself, I just have to humbly acknowledge, it's possible. That vast space is very vast. There's a lot of planets. Why would this one be the only one with this type of life form on it? So for me, I would say not only is it possible, I would say it's likely. And then, so with regards to Amitabha Buddha, now keep in mind that our own Buddha said, if Ananda had asked him, he could have stayed to the end of the eon. Now, what may have happened then is Lord Buddha might have seen that in the world, the beings who had a karmic connection with him in the form world and the human world had run out, they'd all been liberated. And then through the power of his powers, he could move to Tusita Heaven, that's how we understand the Pure Lands. The Pure Lands are Tusita Heaven. That's at least how Ajahn and explains them. So it's like our Buddha, so that's how I understood, that's what Amitabha probably did. He probably became a Buddha in another universe, in a human world, for a period of time, and then moved to Tusita Heaven in that universe, and is able to live in that state, in that birth, until the end of the eon, and encourages people who have karmic affinity with him to come and practice with him in Tusita Heaven. So it's one of those things. People are either going to have faith in that or not. And this is going to depend on past imprints and past practices, probably. And it just happens to be the case that a lot of Chinese Buddhists do. They just have faith in Amitabha. I would suggest that comes from something. I think he does exist. And those who have a deep intuitive faith in the existence of Amitabha probably built virtue with him in his many previous lives, and some of them. So it's one of those things. If one brings to mind Amitabha with faith, love and devotion, and wants to go and live with him and makes that their main practice, that actually produces a lot of merit. Constantly thinking of the Buddha, constantly aspiring to be reborn in Tusita Heaven, and making the mind bright, making the mind radiant, doing these mantras, it's producing a lot of merit. And then the power of the aspiration, the Buddhas have great abilities. So part of the way it works is if you've made the vow millions of times at the breakup of this body, may I be reborn in Tusita Heaven in the presence of Amitabha, Amitabha will be aware of that. And if he will send an emissary, your lotus, if you have enough merit and you die with clarity, your lotus will be waiting for you as the consciousness leaves your body and literally come and pick you up and take you. But it requires great faith, great consistent effort. It's a true leap of faith. And if people have it, they can do it. So I have asked this with monks who have these abilities. So it's a different universe. You are going to need the kind of faith that can jump universes. And some people have that faith. And partly because of karmic affinity. And so the person who it would be suitable to aspire is the kind of person who just has great faith in Amitabha and a great loving devotion to want to go and be with him, and who can recite the mantra for many hours a day. That person may very well succeed. If you don't have all of those attributes, then you better stick with Buddho and breath meditation and cultivating loving kindness and cultivating impermanence and sticking to this universe. And whatever your noble aspiration, I wish you every blessing and support and success in realizing it.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. Ajahn, question 5. Regarding Luang Por Mun's biography that Buddha appeared to Ajahn, how can Buddha who has gone beyond achieve Nibbana can still appear to advance arahant? Thank you.
Yes, good question. So, Lord Buddha said, one of the ways that Lord Buddha describes Nibbana is the unconditioned, and he also describes it as the deathless. And for whatever reason, people hear the Buddha passed away in Kusinara, the body died, and he attained Maha Parinibbana. For whatever reason that I don't completely understand, people make an assumption that it's like some kind of suicide or nihilism. The Buddha entered a black hole and there's nothing left. He finally did it. He successfully obliterated all trace of anything. And yet the word the Buddha uses is deathless. So this is something one needs to contemplate. Lord Buddha explained that he did not teach either eternalism or nihilism, and this is where it's tricky. The Buddha didn't become an eternal self either. But something remains, the purified and liberated mind, which knows it's not self. So what actually dies? Ignorance, greed, and hatred dies. Delusion falls away. The mind is liberated. It experiences Nibbana. Nibbana, when people make efforts to describe Nibbana, they say it's like the sky, it's like all of empty space, and kind of white, and kind of see-through, boundless and empty, but there is a knowing that knows boundless emptiness. And it also knows it's not a self. But they talk about the empty sky mind. It's like something's experiencing that knows it's not a self, that abandoned all clinging and attachment. And so it seems to be the case that if a person has attained to Nibbana, stream entry or higher, so they already have the mind established on the other shore. And if they have fourth jhana, so you're talking about significantly purified mind with really extraordinary collectedness, pure equanimity. After coming out of that meditation, sometimes the Buddhas or the arahants appear to them and they can have conversations. But it's the most refined phenomenon in the universe, and it's probably even above the universe. One of the ways they describe arahants or the Buddha in Thailand is Nua Jak Lok, above the world, above the conditions, unconditioned. So people who have significantly purified minds with really remarkable concentration, they're also, when you look at their body, they kind of look ordinary, but their minds are not ordinary. Their minds are very pure and very subtle. So very pure and very subtle minds, it seems, are able to relate to other pure and subtle minds. And probably a large factor is whatever being you have a karmic connection with. So if you built merits and paramis with a certain being who became a Buddha, in the lifetime that you become an arahant, that Buddha may be able to teach you or visit you. But yeah, it's not something, I guess you don't have to believe it and you don't have to not believe it, but it's a common enough experience. Like I know a good number of arahants who talk about their conversations with the Buddha, just so that you know that. It's not something that Luang Por Mun made up. If Luang Por Mun says it happens, and if some of Ajahn awakened disciples also experience similar things, then there's probably something to it. And for me, the way I relate to it is like, well, how wonderful. That's something to look forward to. But you do have to become a Sotapanna and get fourth jhana before it's likely to be possible. So plug away.